To start this section of the module, I want to begin by saying that finding out who you are really is a very personal journey and one which only you know how to navigate. So for this education portion, I'm going to introduce you to a few ways you can start to really connect with your inner self. But to do this, you do need to dedicate some time to really doing the work. Then I'm going to discuss a handful of qualities that nearly every survivor of domestic abuse possesses, and they may help you to gain a clearer insight into who you are and reveal that you're not alone in some of these traits, and that by deepening your self-awareness through understanding a few different personality types, you're better prepared to recognise situations which may have an adverse effect on your confidence, your self-belief and your well-being. So, let's start by exploring what your identity actually is and how you can connect with it in a way that is deep and meaningful, and it's going to have a profound effect on your life from here on out. We'll start with your personal identity. Now, this is your chosen identity, the way that you decide to be seen by others, how you interact with the world around you, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. It's 100% subjective and due to constant change. Your personal identity is shaped by your dreams and your visions and the values which define your actions and your interactions. This goes to the very core of your mind and it influences the way you think, how you come up with new ideas, how you make decisions and what you consider to be important. And the opposite to this personal identity is your reputation. This is the way that people around you actually see you. It's the way people perceive how you act and how they think that you are. Now, there's always a gap between how you see yourself, your self-image, and how people see you, that public image. And it's only once you've connected deeply with your own personal identity that you can start using your understanding of yourself to inform your behaviours and therefore how those outside of yourself see and know you. The first thing to do is to spend time on your own. When it comes to reconnecting with your own identity, you have to learn to love being with yourself. So often we don't give ourselves the chance to be alone and figure out what we really want from life. We're afraid because we feel like our identity is a reflection of how others view us, and that's just simply not the case. Relationships with friends and family and others are very important, but outside of those relationships you need to connect to who you are by doing things with yourself, even when, in fact especially when it scares you. Another thing that can help to reveal our identity is journaling. And journaling is one of the most profound things that you can do to connect with who you are. When we journal regularly, we uncover layers of what we believe, what we want to create, and who we want to be. Journaling allows us to have that solo conversation with ourselves and see what's truly coming from the core. And one of the reasons it's so important to connect with your identity is that it allows us to feel present, connected and in line with what we're doing in life. So give yourself the time and space to connect with yourself through journaling and explore the internet for journal prompts specifically designed to reveal your true beliefs and your desires. Now, linked to this and another way to connect with your authentic self is to spend some time creating a should versus a want list. Think about everything you're trying to accomplish in your life at the moment and categorise them into shoulds versus wants. If something is in your should list, then you're feeling the pressure that you should get or have those things, but maybe you don't really want them. These are things like I should lose weight or I should co-parent. But if you're losing weight simply because you think you should, things aren't going to work out. It's better to figure out sooner rather than later if you're doing things due to external pressure or because it's something you really want. This practice will leave you with a list of shoulds that you can completely disregard. And when it comes to co-parenting with an ex-abuser, everyone's situation is very different, but do not let external social pressures push you into an arrangement that you're not comfortable with. Your children need a happy, healthy and content mother who is true to herself and confident in her ability to create the life she deserves. If co-parenting is going to affect that, then alter the arrangement. Look into other parenting solutions like parallel parenting or no contact parenting, and alter the communication method to one that suits you as much as everyone else. Now, in the same way that we find similar and common personality traits in abusive personality types, it stands to reason that we also see similar traits in survivors of domestic abuse too. Of course, everyone is an individual and we each have our own identity, but it is possible to recognise some shared characteristics and experiences when it comes to how we feel or behave in certain situations. It can also be helpful to know about these, as sometimes this knowledge can answer questions that we may have been struggling with for our entire lives and reassure us that we're not alone. Two of the most common personality types that are associated to people who have been victimised by an abuser are highly sensitive person and empath. So if you're a high sensing person, you're an individual who's able to take in and process external stimuli at a very high rate due to high functioning brain waves. And you might experience extra sensitivity to light, sight, sounds, smells and touch. High sensing people are more aware of the emotions around them, since they're able to read the subtle clues given off by others through their body language or through voice inflection. And highly sensitive people tend to be quite philosophical or spiritual rather than materialistic or hedonistic. And they tend to dislike small talk and will describe themselves as being creative or intuitive. If you're a high sensing person, you might dream very vividly and be able to recall those dreams and love music, nature, art and all physical beauty. You probably feel exceptionally strong emotions and tend to notice what other people miss. Now, empathic people possess all of those qualities that the high sensing people have, but are further affected physically by the energy of others in some way, shape or form. Because of this, empaths are often magnetic to others and find themselves in situations where people share their life stories or seek their wise advice all the time. And empaths literally soak up the emotions and ailments of those around them and can become very easily overwhelmed in crowds as they struggle to process all of those energies at once. Empaths must reset, recharge and rest with ample alone time, and you might find that you become exhausted or your boundaries become very difficult to maintain if you don't get some peace. And one of the hardest parts of being an empath is knowing that people aren't saying what they're really thinking and they're hiding their real intentions or suppressing their real emotions. And one of the most difficult things about being an empath is learning that we can't help everyone. No matter how much they're hurting, if they don't wish to help themselves, then we can't help them. The hardest lessons are often the most difficult to implement because it's in our very nature to help, and some people will only learn if they face their battles and their demons head on, and some just never will. Now, you may identify strongly with some of these traits, maybe even all of them, or maybe just a few ring true. This is all about empowering yourself with that knowledge. This is about getting to know yourself, your light, your darkness, your strengths, your weaknesses, having an awareness of yourself and your ability to acknowledge yourself and then set healthy boundaries, and in effect, the ability to say no. And once you establish how to do this, you become the woman who knows herself well, who's full of energy and a great manifester, who knows what she wants and sets clear and healthy boundaries. She's confident and balanced and clear-headed, and you create income by doing what you're good at and what you love. These are empaths who are empowered, and they don't please others. They don't need validation, and they say no without guilt. They attract abundance by helping others, and they have respectful relationships. They trust in the power of the higher self, and they feel the fear, and then they go for their dreams. And all of this starts with identifying, establishing, and then maintaining your personal boundaries. Boundaries are limits we set for ourselves. Everyone's boundaries are different, and they are based on what is personally important to you. Boundaries can be set in several different aspects of life, such as work, relationships, family, and in conflict. And they can be physical or emotional limits, and they help to determine a person's comfort level, their needs, and their preferences. Essentially, boundaries dictate how we want to allow ourselves to be treated and then how we treat others. Healthy boundaries allow for accountability, respect, and open communication. So, if you grew up in a home where there were no boundaries or where people violated your boundaries, setting and maintaining your boundaries may be difficult. And it's okay if it's hard. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It sets the tone for healthy relationships and it's an important part of our well-being. And if you ever notice that you feel resentful or drained by a person, a place, or a situation, it might be time to look at those boundaries that have been violated at the time. Remember, boundaries aren't threats or ultimatums, and sometimes others will find it hard to respect your boundaries, but that's a reflection on them, not you. Healthy boundaries look like valuing your own opinion, respecting limits set by you or others, and not compromising on your values, or not sharing information about others inappropriately. It's about effectively communicating your needs and wants and accepting no's from other people and being able to say no ourselves. It's also about being able to identify when that boundary's been broken. So setting boundaries can take time and it can take practice. So don't get down on yourself if it feels hard at first. The first step is to identify what behaviours from others are acceptable for you and what might cause you discomfort. Then you must clearly communicate that boundary with the other person. Learn to say no and be assertive. You don't have to explain yourself, but you do have to remain confident and respectful, and keep in mind that you're entitled to your boundary regardless of how the other person feels about it. And then you must decide what to do if someone breaks your boundary. This is very important because without a consequence that you're prepared to act upon, your boundary is futile, especially when it comes to abusive and controlling people. Now, it may well mean having a difficult conversation or taking time away from a person or changing the contact method or ending a relationship and putting distance between you and the other person altogether. Okay, so what do boundaries sound like? Well, so a few examples are things like, it's not my responsibility to make sure others are responsible, or it's not my job to rescue people from their drama, or it's okay if others get angry, or it's okay to spend time alone without explaining myself, or other people have every right not to like me or disagree with me, but they don't have the right to disrespect me. And things like, I don't need permission to be who I am, think what I think, or honour myself. Like with most things in life, asserting your boundaries gets easier with practice. And often it not only feels empowering when you actually do it for the first time, you see that other people afterwards hold you with higher regard and show you more respect for having clear and confident boundaries, since we often prefer to know where we stand with others. Maintaining your boundaries is an act of self-care and one that you're absolutely entitled to whenever you feel the need.